Hey woodworkers, welcome back. Today I want to talk about separating lids off of boxes. But before I get started, a big thank you to a viewer by the name of Pat, who was concerned about the audio quality of my videos, and so he sent me out a set of microphones. I hope this is better. I understand that this has been an issue for viewers for the past, but hopefully this is rectified. So thank you, Pat. Okay. So with box lids, I've done a couple things. Number one is you'll notice that the top and then the bottom, these have both received finish prior to assembly, and the reason for this, just like when making solid panel doors, is that as this thing moves, if it's not finished before, when it contracts, you're going to see this halo around the edges where there's no finish, and there's no good way to get in there after the fact. So finishing the entirety of both faces of this piece, top and bottom, and that should alleviate a lot of problems with this long term. All right, so removing the lid of this, and there's going to be a section where we have a lower piece here. This kind of signifies where I'm going to have some type of a knob. I'll have hinges here in the back, so this will be the dimension of the lid more or less. And then I have this little wave pattern which you might be able to pick up on. So I don't want to bisect that where the lid is. I want to bring that up just above a little bit of where that is, and that way it stays consistent. If I were to cut between that and then the kerf of the blade and then cleaning those things up, it's going to make this kind of hiccup between where this line wants to continue. So, all right, staying above all that. So theory here of this is that you do fine on separating the lid from the rest of the box for the first three cuts. So this will be number one, go through, number two, probably fine, number three, fine. But then we have this really horrible hinge point here that has not been separated. And so what this will look like is that these three areas have all been cut. And I have this section here, and I can't put any pressure on this because as I advance this box through, if I'm putting any pressure into this lid, that's going to cut or push the lid of this box into the side of that spinning blade, which is a mess. It'll, if you're lucky, change the dimension of that part of the lid of the box. If you're unlucky, it's going to have too much pressure and it's going to either kick back or give you some trouble. But either way, I just don't like moving parts when I'm cutting things on the table saw. So that said, I need to set up the height of this so that, the height of the blade I should say, so that when I'm cutting, I'm going to leave a little bit of material behind to keep this consistent. Bear with me, zooming in, hopefully that works. Yeah. So what I'm looking for is to bring this height up so I'm leaving somewhere in the neighborhood of a 1/16th to a 32nd of an inch of material between the top of the blade and then what is going to hold all of this into a nice consistent dimension all the way through, cutting all the way around. Once I've done that, A, it's safer, and then B, I'm not going to change the dimension of the lid or any of the other parts of the boxes. All right, so that's the setup. Let me see if I can zoom out. Here we are. Okay. All right. So then the next piece is, as we talked about, where this little curve is, or the stripe. I want to avoid that. So I'm going to stay a little bit away from that, knowing that no matter how sharp my blade is, no matter how good my setup is, there's always going to be some level of cleanup that has to happen that I'm going to have to remove, either with hand planer, block plane, or some capacity of this. But this corner is my highest point with that curve. I'm on the lid side of that, so I should be ready to go. All right, doesn't really matter sequence or order of which one I cut first. So I'll just do the long section here, and then if I work my way around, that'll lead me to the small section, or if I'm strategic, I'll cut the long axis, short, short, and then the last one will be the long, and it should be fine. All right, here we go. So at this point, I just want to illustrate it. I think this is easy enough to understand, but there is material here in this little groove, and that's what I'm looking for. So I can't compress this, I can't pinch or twist or any of that, so this is great. That should make this glass cut very safe. All right, here we go. So with that, I should have a decent opportunity for doing what is going to be the last step on the bench, which is going to be separating these pieces out. But before I do the separation of this lid, I do want to take advantage of finish prep while I'm here. So I'm going to sand all of these surfaces while there's a connection between these two, figuratively, but also very literally. If I try to sand the lid individually, that's going to be a disaster because that's going to be all over the place, and it's also going to be an opportunity for this thing to start, when I'm sanding, kind of rounding the corners on this little thin piece. So because I have enough internal structure of all this, I'm going to sand all the way around. I'm also going to clean up these edges if I still need to. I would have done what is going to be touching the fence prior to this operation. So these ones should be fairly well aligned so that your cuts start here and then they line up at the exact same spot. So anyway, cleaning all those things up, usually just by sanding, and then once I'm done with that, then we'll go to the bench and separate these things out. So I'll do the sanding, I'll meet you over at the bench.